Hi, my name is Cornelia Baumgartner. I'm a clinical operations manager and I support biotech startups with strategic planning and hands-on execution. Today I want to explore a topic that sits at the intersection of ethics, compliance and patient engagement: the informed consent.
This is our trial participant. This is Max. Max is ill and he considers participating in a clinical trial. 20 pages of dense text, study jargon, medical complexity. And just when you think it's over, 5 more pages of data protection, anonymization, pseudonymization, boom! This isn't consent, it's surrender.
Max's experience isn't unique. Long, technical, unreadable consent forms are still the norm. We all say we are compliant, but are we really? In my opinion, let us explore why. As Einstein said, if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it yourself. So, are informed consent forms accessible to participants? Here is the problem. We are giving people with busy lives, severe illnesses and diverse backgrounds pages and pages of dense material. I made a research about the reading habits of the average European and North American adult. So let us compare the reading habits to the average informed consents. The average reading time is approximately 13 minutes, while an informed consent requests between 17 and 40 minutes to read it. In average, an adult reads about 13 pages a day, and the length of informed consent spans from 8 to 40 pages, depending on the complexity of the trial. Let's break it down to words. In average, we read 4,000 words a day. And again, the average informed consent has somewhat between 2,500 and 12,000 words. Nowadays, where attention spans are short, we may claim that our standard way of informing trial participants is not accessible, and therefore my question: is this according to the regulations? If the standard informed consent often exceeds the average daily reading capacity of the participants, or if the length of the document is 26 pages plus, far beyond what most can process while healthy, trial participants are often severely ill. Let me ask you, if you are down with a simple cold, do you read lengthy, technical and dense documents? I certainly don't. In 1999, 20 Minuten, 20 minutes, revolutionized how the information was delivered in Switzerland. 20 minutes is a free, accessible newspaper. It is handed out free of cost at train stations or bus stops. It soon became the country's most read newspaper. So, why this success? Because it matched how people consume information: short articles, bold headlines and visuals. Actually, the idea for this format came after the Swiss population reading habits were analyzed, and obviously it matched. Shouldn't informed consent evolve the same way? Our audience, trial participants, also live in a 20-minute world, where quick, mobile and nice visuals is preferred. Yet, we still hand them long, informed consent documents with dense technical content on paper. The disconnect to me raises the questions: are we designing the content with the participants in mind, or for the regulatory authority? Well, you may ask me now, why does it matter? We have to inform the patients, we have clear requests what we need to cover from the regulatory agencies and the ethics committees. Absolutely. But when participants don't truly understand the study, we face risks. Is it ethical to let the patients in the dark, like in the Tuskegee study in 1932? Regulators may also not be overly pleased or amused if they discover that informed consent documents are lengthy and not readable. Well, here we could blame the ethics committee, since they approved that document. But that doesn't help us either, right? From an operational point of view, if the participants don't really understand what they consent to, it may lead to a higher dropout rate or more protocol deviations. Nothing we really want. When I got married 20 years ago, an encyclopedia, a series of 20 thick books, was on our wish list. A decorative item in our living room. Looks smart and collects a lot of dust. No idea when it was last consulted for information. So let us explore how the generations gathered information and what formats they used to learn. The silent generation had newspapers, books and radio. They learned from printed materials and in-person conversations. The baby boomers already had TV formats. My father tells us the story how it was when his grandfather had the first TV in the village. He and his siblings were heroes because they were allowed to invite some friends from time to time to the weekly children's program on TV. Gen X, my generation, grew up in an analog world where the digitalization started. With the early days of internet, truly not to compare to the internet we have today, but we got used to also learn from digital formats. The millennials already had social media, apps, online videos, and shifted more and more from printed to digital. The Generation Z use YouTube videos, TikTok, online communities. They learn from social media channels, interactive apps, games and videos. And the generation that is growing up now, Generation Alpha, they have voice assistant, artificial reality, artificial intelligence, and whatever is to come in the next years. Well, and our informed consent, in general, or the same format, regardless of age, gender, and digital literacy. Interestingly, this year in June, in the Swiss media, it was announced that 20 Minutes is discontinuing its daily print edition to focus entirely on digital. Why that? It is the most read newspaper in Switzerland. Well, I think it is a sign of the change. People want digital, flexible and on-demand content. Coming back to the informed consent. Why do we need to inform our trial participants? History reminds us. From the Tuskegee syphilis study to Jesse Gelsinger's death in a gene therapy trial, these were devastating failures of transparency. In the Tuskegee study, 400 African American men were enrolled in an NIH study, told they had bad blood. They did not receive treatment, even though that penicillin was available and the standard of treatment for syphilis. Jessie, a teenager with a mild form of the disease, volunteered to participate in a trial with the hope to improve the quality of life of other patients with the same gene defect. He and his family were not informed about unfavorable events that previous participants experienced. A couple of days after he was treated, he was dead. So do you think he would have volunteered if he had known that there were serious issues? What was the response? Strong regulations, higher ethical standards. The Declaration of Helsinki, ICH-GCP, and the clinical trial regulations all make it clear. Consent must be informed, voluntary, and in a format the subject can understand. So, we must ask ourselves, are we living up to that standard today? What needs to change? Let's have a look at the different generations again. The silent generation, they occasionally use digital tools, FaceTime, text messages, maybe emails. The baby boomers, they not only have the coolest generation name, they are also called digital migrants. They had to adapt during their professional lives to computers and innovations, and are now quite interested and open to digital tools. Gen X, my generation, we were born analog and grew up as the digitalization did. I can tell you, I am more than happy that smartphones were not present during my wild teenage years. The stories and pictures captured and unforgotten in the internet would be a nightmare to raise now my teenagers. Millennials, the digital natives, they already have an easier access to digital tools. They are more active on social media and use these platforms not only for fun but also for professional development. Gen Z, mobile first and always. As an example, one afternoon my son informed me that he meets with friends. As a Gen X person, I assumed it was a meeting in person. Well, I was wrong. It was a video game afternoon, all the boys sitting in their home and playing together. Generation Alpha, well, that story is not yet final, but they certainly grow up in a super digital world. In public transportation or restaurants, I often observe that already babies are pacified with smartphones. So what is needed now? It isn't just better wording. I think it's a complete mindset shift. We need to tailor informed consent to participants' preference, demographic, and illness. A silent generation participant may prefer paper-based informed consent, but if there is an illness that makes it hard to read, a video or a podcast may be better. Regularly assess and update your consent process. If you see that the format you have chosen at the beginning is not fit for purpose, change it. Now, let's have a look at the regulations. Are they keeping up with the digitalization? Yes, they do. So the EMA defines the e-consent as the use of electronic systems to support informed consent. This can include multimedia tools, interactive interfaces, and e-signatures. Key points: the e-consent must still contain all elements of ICH-GCP and the other applicable regulations. The discussion with the investigator must still occur, and ethics committees must approve content, the process and the systems. So, here we are. The rules are clear and the tools exist. What is missing? Sometimes just the will to change. Let's embrace the challenge and make the consenting not an act of just ticking the box, be it on the sponsor side or on the participant side, because respecting a participant doesn't start with a signature. It starts with clarity, with communication that's honest, human, and accessible. That is not a compliance issue, it is a commitment. Thank you for your time and attention. If you would like to connect or exchange ideas on how to modernize your consent process or trial operations, feel free to reach out or go to my webpage and download my free ebooks and white papers. The collection is growing.